There were signs. There were signs. I saw them. I didn't want to admit to them. I blew them off. I rationalized them, and I waited. I waited, and thank God I did not wait until it was too late. Finally, I listened to the signs and I realized that it was time for me to reinvent and rebrand my business, which for me, it's pretty much the same as reinventing and rebranding my life. So today's episode is difficult for me to record. It was difficult for me to record. It was freeing. It is exciting. This will be a blockbuster episode. I guarantee you that you will relate to at least one of the signs we talk about. And we are talking about 5 signs that it's time to reinvent your life. It's difficult to admit it when it happens, but I'll tell you what, once you admit it and you work with someone or join a community or talk with friends about what you need to do to positively disrupt your life, once you admit it and once you get closer to that life that you know that you want and deserve, that is truly thriving. And that's what we're going to do today. I can't wait. Let's jump in. Sisters, when you look up blockbuster episode in the dictionary, that's today. Today's the episode that is going to change your life. This is the episode that has changed my life. And I have to tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable. I really am a little uncomfortable recording this. So I'm going to jump in and walk the talk. We are talking today, Podsters, about how to determine that it's time to reinvent your life. The 5 signs that it's time for a reinvention. I don't really love that word, I'm not going to lie. When I was talking with my coach, we talked about rebranding your life. And I like that. I like rebranding your life, reinventing, reinvigorating, retooling, redesigning, whatever resonates with you. 5 ways to know that it's time. So let me tell you how I know that this podcast episode will resonate with you. If you are saying, when people ask, how are things? And you're saying, fine. If things are status quo, if you're okay. Again, if things are fine. Fine is not thriving. And fine is not living a life where you are following your passions and living your values and doing what it is that you love to do. That's not fine. Not everybody can be hitting it on all cylinders every minute of every day. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if for an extended period of time, you are not excited about your days, you're not excited when you get up in the morning for an extended period of time, it's time to ask yourself if you're settling. Are you settling for fine? That's a really, really hard realization to come to. So what's going to happen is after you listen to the episode, you're going to walk away with a little more clarity. You're going to walk away with 5 questions to ask yourself, and you're going to walk away with a couple steps that you can use to take action. So let's hit it. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about why this is so important to me right now and why it is so nerve-wracking for me. So we are on episode 144, I think. So that's almost 3 years of Unmute Yourself, the podcast, the Unmute Yourself email community, the best-selling book, the top 5% podcast, my speaking engagements, all of it. I've had a fantastic run in this business. I've worked very hard. I have developed many different relationships. I have pivoted and retooled and changed things around, really, as any business person does. And I came to the realization recently that it is time to reinvent my business. And it is time to rebrand Unmute Yourself. More on that later. What I want to share with you now is how I got here and how difficult it was for me to recognize that. And then how long I waited and all of the limiting beliefs in my head and all of the bull stories that I told myself. And I'm going to give you a really specific example because it was actually hilarious that I told myself to kind of put off taking action. So here we go, Podsters. You ready? I'm ready. Number one, the number one, or not the number one of the ways that you know that it is time to reinvent your life is you are feeling apathetic or indifferent towards things that used to bring you joy. People, places, or things that used to bring you joy. I'm going to give you a few examples. When I talk about people, I'm talking about friends, family, colleagues, even your partner. And if you're feeling apathetic or indifferent towards your partner, that's not always a sign that there's something wrong in the relationship or something needs to change in the relationship. It could be that something needs to change in you. And that's a hard conversation to have with yourself. Even even your family, your kids, if you're just not feeling it with your kids, this could be a sign that it's time for a reinvention. When I say places, I mean places that you used to love. So for me, that's the beach, and it's a specific beach. It's actually Boston Beach for those of you that are familiar with Cape Cod. The beach, your favorite restaurants. If you used to love going to some of these restaurants and now you're just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I guess I'll go. Events, if there are events that you used to love attending, travel, if you used to love to travel, and or if there's a big trip that you've been planning for a while and now you're just kind of like, yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm going, I guess I'm going. If you're not excited about it and it feels like a chore, this could be a sign that it's time for a reinvention. Okay, so I said people, places, and things. When I talk about things, and this could be anything. This could be jewelry that you once loved. It could be your kids' artwork. It could be outfits. It could be, even small joys like Skittles, right? So we all know that I love Skittles. Is it here? I have a very unhealthy obsession with Skittles. And over the past, I'd say maybe year, I've been going through this, and I haven't had Skittles in probably a year. Am I saying Skittles equals crisis or crisis of identity, or Skittles equals time to reinvent? No. What I'm saying is if there are things that you used to love to do, see, be, hear, eat, and now you don't for a while, for an extended period of time, that is a sign that there is something's up, and it's time to make some tough decisions. Remember, fine is not thriving. Fine is the antithesis of thriving. And this indifference over time, it's a red flag. So I want you to ask yourself, we're all about accountability here at Unmute Yourself, the podcast, which is going to be rebranded shortly. Are you ignoring these feelings, or are you burying these feelings because it feels too overwhelming to make a change? If you're having these feelings, it's time for a change. And this change is going to be somewhat disruptive, not disastrous, disruptive. So if you feel like you're having these thoughts or you're feeling this way, pay attention and maybe try to figure out if you're avoiding it or why you're avoiding it, or recognize all the reasons why you're telling yourself you can't, such as, I should be grateful for what I have. I don't like, who gets to do that? No one gets to do that. Or if people are shaming you into, well, why aren't you just happy with your life? Look, you have everything. You live in a $5 million house. Why aren't you happy with your life? You have 3 homes. Why aren't you happy with your life? You have beautiful children and a loving husband and a great career. Why aren't you happy with your life? You have raised a wonderful family and the world is your oyster. Why aren't you happy with your life? Any of these scenarios, they're not helpful because at the end of the day, you're not. Something's off. So that's what we have to figure out. And that's what you have to figure out. Okay. Number 2, you are feeling jealous instead of inspired. So what I mean by this is instead of feeling excited when you see someone doing what it is that you want to do, or you see someone living this life that you want to live, or you see someone really just crushing it, instead of feeling excited, you feel resentful. Now, there's a difference between envy and jealousy. Envy is, wow, see that? I want that too, which I have that often. Whereas jealousy is, well, how come she gets to do that and I don't? Or how come she has that and I don't? Or, oh, I know why she has that. It's because she has more money or resources or a bigger staff or a better husband or better kids, whatever the case may be. So envy is okay. Jealousy, pay attention, because what it is you're jealous of, or when you're feeling that jealousy, that's telling you what it is that you are meant to go do, and or that you really feel like you want to go do. It's showing you what you want, but have not yet made the move to pursue. And that is the one of the biggest things for you to figure out. So think about what you're jealous of these days and think about what it's telling you about what it is that you think you want for yourself. Okay, now this one is going to be a little hard to hear. Sign number three is when you are sick of what you're doing. And I'm not saying that you wake up every day like, what's her name from The Hills Are Alive? Julie Andrews from The Sound of Music and pirouette through the hills. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're bored with your work, if you're bored with your routine, if you are bored with your life, if you're feeling bored with your life, that is okay. That is a sign that something needs to change. And it doesn't need to be a massive, I'm going to go, backpack across Machu Picchu and come back with divine intervention. That's not what that means. It means you're not fulfilled. If you're bored, and if you're bored for an extended period of time at work, at home, with your relationship, with your routine, with your hobbies, with your friends, with your family, whatever, then something needs to change. It's not bringing you joy. And I think back to I was in sales for 25 plus years, and I always believed in what I was selling, always. I would never walk into a client's office without truly believing that what I was offering was the best or was a good fit for them. And it's when I started not being into it, like if I felt myself when I used to feel myself saying, "These proposals are so boring," or if I have to talk about this one more time, I knew that it was time for me to think about what was next. It was time for me to think about moving on. Now that was in my career, and that was with what I was selling until I would find something else that I was passionate about selling. Same thing with your life. If you're bored with what's happening, it's time to figure out or go find what you're passionate about or what you won't be bored about, what will get you excited. So if you feel like you're going through the motions or phoning it in, again, for an extended period of time, we all have times, it could be a month, it could be 3 months where you're just not into it. That simply is what it is. That's life cycles. If it's been a while and you're still continuing to have these feelings, I would say, 6 months or more. That's what I would say. If you can trace it back to 6 months or more of that, you know, kind of, oh God, I'm just a little restless or bored, then it's time to do some serious thinking and then some serious action. So I may have said this before, and I'm going to say it again. You don't get to thrive and stay in the familiar. You don't get to live this magnificent life that's available to you by playing small and continuing to settle for fine. You can't have both. You can't have both. And fine is fine. If that's what you want to do, great. Then know that on your tombstone, it may say, "Here lies Nancy. Her life was fine." I'm going to tell you a story about about how we came up with this. So I finally, after months and months and months of having some of these feelings, not all of them, but having some of them, and just knowing that something was off, which is going to be number four, I put it off and put it off and put it off, and I finally said, "Okay, Nancy, you're either going to do something or you're not." And this is it. So I went back to my coach. I have a coach myself. She is fantastic. And the minute I might get choked up here. The minute I saw her on that screen, I was so relieved. And I'm actually gonna make her listen to this. I was so relieved because it was admitting that something was off, and that was so hard for me. Look at what I do. Look at what I do for a living. I'm a public speaker. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a life coach. I'm a business coach. I podcaster, wrote a book on unmute yourself, and have enjoyed so much success and spoken to thousands and thousands of women and empowered so many women to use their voice, not to find it because you've always had it, to use their voice. All of the things I've been telling you about, well, you should just be happy with what you have. What do you mean you want something else? What do you mean it feels stale to you? What do you mean? All of these things I'm saying to you, I went through. And the minute I saw her on that screen, I felt so good because I said, okay, it was a relief. It was admitting that something needed to change. And it's changing, Podsters. It's coming. I can't wait to tell you what we came up with. So I mentioned feeling a little bit off. So for me, that was feeling a little restless, unsettled, apathetic, a little anxious. So for you, that might be what that is. It could be something different. If you're not feeling like yourself, again, for an extended period of time, that is a sign that it's time for some life disrupting actions and decisions. You know, it it's hard to admit. It's very hard to admit because, if you think about it, we kind of feel like failures. Like, what do you mean? I have all these things. I should, anybody would kill for this, or other people would kill for this, or whatever, however you want to say it. And it's hard to admit that it was enough, and now you want something different. That's that's how you thrive. That's how you get to be who you are meant to be, admitting it, sitting with those really, really uncomfortable feelings. And they are scary. They're very scary. I'm getting emotional again. They're scary because, you're going to have to make some big changes and it's going to be scary, but you know, scary's okay. Scary's okay because it's the only way we grow and it is the only way we thrive is to step into that version of yourself that's on the other side of all these fears. Okay. So you're feeling restless, unsettled, gratitude feels forced, like we talked about, this toxic gratitude. This could be coming from other people. This could be coming from yourself. So again, I look at I'm gonna take you through what I went through. Look at all I have. I have an amazing life, amazing. And I am grateful for it. And at the same time, something's got to change. Something's going to change in my business because my business, to a certain extent, is my life. It's what I do a lot of the time. I mean, I have boundaries. I blend my work and my life. Remember, balance is a mythical unicorn. I blend. I have great, my personal life is great, and also my business, when that's on my mind, it affects how I'm living and it affects how I'm showing up. Toxic gratitude. That's what you gotta hone in on that. So let me ask you this. Here's my question for you here. This is the question to ask yourself. When was the last time you woke up really excited about your day? Really excited about your day. I mean, I'm a morning person. I jump out of bed in the morning. That's just I'm a morning person. It makes Danny crazy. And I can tell you for a long time, I got out of bed and I was not excited about my day. And like I said, this is really hard to admit to you all. You listen to this podcast to be inspired. So for me to come on here and say, here's how I was feeling, it's hard. It's hard. Now, I will tell you, there is definitely a excellent ending to this and a really great ending to this. So if you're feeling off, whatever that is, pay attention. And if it's for more, I'd say for I would say maybe 4 months or more, something's up and something needs to change. Okay. The last sign that it is time for a life reinvention, your behaviors are changing. And specifically, your good habits are changing. So it could be you're not honoring your own boundaries. It could be you're lowering your standards. I'm going to give you an example here. You're doing the bare minimum at work or in your relationships. I'm going to give you a work example. So I grew up in sales, 25 years. So for me, when a potential client calls or emails or whatever, you get back to them that same day. It does not matter what is happening in your life, the same day. Even if it's to say, hey, Bobby or whatever, thanks so much for your note. I want to let you know I'm tied up today or whatever. I'm whatever you're doing. I will get back to you, or let's set up a time to call, or attach to some information. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be very short. Acknowledge that they sent the inquiry within one day. That's called sales intensity. Within the day. Absolutely inexcusable not to have it responded to in a day. There's no excuse, in my opinion. And when I was in the middle of this, I don't want to call it a funk because it's not a funk. A funk is something you're in and then you get out of. When I was in the middle of this path to knowing that it was time to reinvent my business, there were a couple of times where I was like, I'll get back to him tomorrow. Or, yeah, you know what? It's Monday. As long as I get back to him Wednesday morning, I'm okay. That for me, that would be unacceptable to anyone on my team. So when I was doing that, that is a sign that things are not great because I was not behaving the way I usually behave, particularly when it comes to that. And if you find yourself saying, "I'm fine, things are okay, things are status quo," like I talked about in the beginning, fine is not thriving, and fine is not thriving. So, here's my question for you. Are you settling? Are you settling for fine because either A, you don't wanna admit that you need to make this big change, or B, you're terrified. You know you need to make the change and you're terrified. I can tell you right now, I was terrified, terrified until last week. You don't have to, I don't want to say suffer because you're not suffering. You don't have to work through this on your own. You don't have to figure this out on your own. You're not alone. And I'll tell you what happened. This was really, really interesting. So I set up this appointment with my coach and we had a great call and it was fantastic. And I have my action plans, I got everything, and I'm going to share that with you in a second. Actually, you know what? I'm going to share with you right now. So here's what's happening. I am going to take you along with me in this journey as I reinvent the business. We are rebranding the podcast. We are rebranding the email community. I am rebranding it and calling it my Thrive Hive. Okay. So this is where women who are not satisfied with fine and who are committed to doing the work and making the decisions so that they can truly thrive in their lives. This is where we're all gonna thrive in this hive. Okay. And there's a link in the show notes. If you're not already part of the community, I'm going to launch April 4th. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things that happened. First of all, I had this call. I felt really good after the call but it was still a little unsettling, and I was driving, and I was listening to some podcasts, and there's a podcast that I listen to. Many of you, I'm sure, listen to it. It's called Online Marketing Made Easy by, Amy Porterfield. Amy Porterfield is a huge success in the, entrepreneurial world, huge. Multi-seven-figure business. She's amazing. She's a legend, and I listen to her every now and then. I mean, I used to listen to her religiously. Now I pop in every now and then, and she came on, and it was like a 4-minute episode talking about she's rebranding her podcast. So I thought to myself, that's a sign. I mean, that was weird. I hit that podcast, I said, "Oh, I wonder what she's up to." It came on and she was a lot more articulate about it than I am right now. And she said, "Stay tuned. Here's I'm not leaving you. We're still going to talk about the things we talk about. We're just going to talk about them in a different way." And it really validated that it doesn't matter how successful you are when it is time. It is time. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to share with you was all of the limiting beliefs and the things that I told myself. So I'm on the phone with my coach or the Zoom with my coach. And this is so funny. She said, "Okay, so this is what we're going to do. This is what you're going to do. So what's the date? When are you going to do this?" And I said, "Okay, well, let's say like, I said, okay, let's say like April or May." And her face, she went from this benevolent, kind, supportive coach to like, that was the look on her face. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the look on my face. If you're listening, it was like, "What? What are you talking about?" Like it was just pure doubt, confusion, maybe a little disdain. And I burst out laughing because I said, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what just went through my head. Oh, I need to make sure that I have time to do this. And while I want to launch around a holiday and end of May is Memorial Day, so maybe that's when I'll launch. By the way, that's when everybody checks out for like a week. So for summer. So in my opinion, a terrible time to launch. And all when I have this that I have on May 3rd, that I really need to focus on that. Oh, and I'm gonna be traveling and I have 3 speaking gigs and all this stuff. And I just started laughing because I was believing my own BS. And if that can happen to me, who does this for a living, don't feel bad when it happens to you. Don't feel bad because it happens to all of this. This is why you hire a coach. So we are going to launch the Thrive Hive April 4th. If you would like to be a part of this launch or a part of the community and learn more, there's going to be a link in the show notes. Just give me your email address. It's free community and you will get on the list. I am rebranding the podcast. We are going to rename it. We're going to redo the graphics. I am very open to any suggestions on names for the podcast. So this is for a community of women who are not satisfied with fine and are willing to do what it takes to disrupt their lives in a positive way so that they can truly thrive. I love the word thrive. So if you're creative and you have any ideas, I might even have a little podcast naming contest. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a podcast naming contest. I don't know how that's going to work. I will come back to you with how that's going to work. So here's what I'm going to say. If you think you have a name, either send me a note, Instagram, Nancy_Medoff, LinkedIn, Nancy Medoff at nancymedoff.com, or hit me up. Just take a screenshot of this podcast episode on social media and put in what you think a good name would be. And I'll tell you what, if we choose your name, I will either have you as a guest on the podcast or I will give you a free coaching session. How do you like that? That's $1,000 value right there. No joke. It is. So keep the ideas coming if you have some ideas for what we might want to call it. Okay, let's recap the 5 signs that it's time for a life rebrand or reinvention. You're feeling indifferent or apathetic towards things that used to bring you joy. You're feeling jealous instead of inspired. You're sick of what you're doing. You're bored. You're feeling off. You feel off. And finally, your behaviors are changing and not in the direction not the way you want them to change. So if you're feeling any of this, sign up for the email community. There's going to be a lot of really great information coming. Think about what you want to change. So that's what I would say. Think about what you want to change. You don't have to take any action other than signing up for my community, the Thrive Hive, and just sit with it. And because admitting it is really, to me, that's like 80% of the key. 80% is just admitting it. And when you're done admitting it, or when you admit it, you will likely be pretty terrified. And think about what's worse: settling for this fine and letting your life pass you by, or taking the chance, doubling down on yourself, believing in yourself, taking the calculated risks. I'll tell you, I'd rather have that scary than staying the same when I know that something needs to change. So that Podsters, that's the exciting news. April 4th, stay tuned. I'm so incredibly pumped for this. For me, for you, for those who join us, it's going to be epic. So with that, I will see you next week. Peace out, Podsters.